We are quite serious about a gospel-based moral and cultural revolution in America. We're not throwing in the towel. We're not saying it's too late. We believe it's time to stand up for what's right and to push back. One of the men who's been effectively pushing back for some years now, especially online, especially as an influential blogger, Matt Walsh. His new book, The Unholy Trinity, Blocking the Left's Assault on Life, Marriage, and Gender. Back in 2004, it was the first time that God started to lay on my heart that I needed to get involved with issues of LGBT activism. And I saw quickly that it had become the principal threat to freedom of religion, speech, and conscience in America. I saw quickly how far it had gone in media, in schools, etc. Became burdened about the issues, then became burdened about the people, and began to follow the philosophy, reach out and resist, reach out to the people with compassion, resist the agenda with courage. Of course, when you stand for these things, you get maligned, hated. When I went to publish my 20th book, A Queer Thing Happened to America, lo and behold, no publisher would touch it. 3 subsequently apologized to me, but nobody would touch it. Too controversial. So when you're doing this, you don't find many other voices standing up clearly, because the moment you do, you get hated, vilified. You're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're worse, you're a Nazi, you're KKK, you're a bigot. So when I began to see some years back the Matt Walsh blogs, I said, look at this. He's putting all this time and energy into these blogs. They're terrific. They're getting read by hundreds of thousands, now millions of people. Now he has a book out, The Unholy Trinity. So I'm so glad for the first time to bring to the line of fire Matt Walsh. Hey, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Great to be here.
Matt, how old are you?
I am 30.
30 years old. All right, so you represent then, you are a millennial voice technically, correct?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm still in that millennial demographic.
Got it. And you married? You have kids?
Yeah, I'm married. I've got 3 kids now.
3 kids. Got it. So how in the world do you get involved in a battle like this, one in which you become maligned and hated and vilified just for taking stands? What is it that pushed you to action?
Well, I would say more than a what, it's a who. You know, I give all the credit to my parents, who raised, I have 5 brothers and sisters, and we were raised in the truth, you know, in faith and in truth. And more than that, we were raised and encouraged to go out and engage the culture and to stand for our beliefs, even if we get pushed back, you know. And we went to public school, and so we found ourselves constantly, you know, our belief systems constantly being attacked and maligned. And we were always told that if you stand for what's true and what's right at school, that even if you get in trouble with your teachers or whatever, you'll never be in trouble at home if that's you know what causes trouble for you. So I was kind of raised into it. So in that way, I'd say it sort of had it easy, just in the sense that I inherited this fight, and so you know, then that's one thing that I keep in mind now as I'm a parent, you know, with my kids.
And how have things shifted, say, since you were in school to today? Have things been on a steady moral, spiritual sanity decline in our culture?
Yeah, they were pretty bad when I was in school, and I think to some degree it has a little bit to do with where you are geographically. But the school system, no matter where you are, the school system is fundamentally hostile to so-called traditional values, Christian values. There's no question about that, and there was no question about it when I was in school. You know, I graduated. I got out of the public school system, 13, 14 years ago, and from the look of it, and I haven't had direct experience with the public school system since, but from the look of it, it seems like it's only getting worse. And now when you inject this kind of gender ideology into the picture, which didn't really exist when I was there,
mm-hmm.
but you inject that into it, you factor that in, and it's really gotten to the point in a lot of these schools where what they're teaching the kids is just completely divorced from reality, from truth, and it's pretty bad.
I saw on Twitter yesterday, and then I posted it on Facebook, a page from Amazon.com. It's a T-shirt, and actually there are bunches of different designs that says there are more than 2 genders, and then you can either buy men's size or women's size. There's something fundamentally contradictory when you just say that there are infinite number of genders, and we have to call it out for what it is. So how do you describe this, the transgender activism, the war on gender, part of this unholy trinity? What, in your view, is going on? How do you characterize this?
Well, I think this, in some ways, is kind of the last stage in the left's war on objective truth, and in their attempt to instate relativism as the guiding principle of our society, because that's ultimately what they want to do. They want to live in a world where I have my own truth and my own reality, and I get to make up everything for myself. I am not subject to anything or anyone. There are no laws, no rules, nothing that can impose itself on me. That's what the world they want to live in, and they began with their attempts to redefine human life. 40 years ago, they were successful, at least legally speaking, in the courts, and then they moved on to gender, to marriage, and then on to gender. And once they're finished here, if they're able to succeed, and of course they'll never succeed in reality, because
right?
Men are men, women are women, no matter what they do. But if they succeed just in terms of they fully normalize the idea that you can be whatever gender you want of any of the 5,000 options, if they succeed in fully normalizing that and getting society to fully adopt it, then that's sort of it. I mean, then there is no more truth left in our society. I don't know where you could go from there that would be any worse. I think we've sort of reached bottom at that point.
Right. Well, perception is reality. Bruce Jenner is a woman. Rachel Dolezal is black. The woman who believes she's a cat is a cat, and on and on. So perception becomes reality, in which case, how can you function as a society in any meaningful way? And if you declare war on gender successfully, you said in reality they can't, but that's how life goes around. So these things, in a sense, are self-destructive. So in your book, The Unholy Trinity, Blocking the Left's Assault on Life, Marriage, and Gender, you're putting three things together here and saying all part of the same battle: abortion, the meaning of marriage, the definition of gender. Are these ideologically linked? Are they linked because you have the same activists behind them? Is this the Illuminati behind it? How are these joined together in reality?
Well, I don't know about the Illuminati, but they're certainly ideologically they're linked, in that seems to be total unity on and this is one thing that separates the left from the right. That on the left there's almost complete unity in terms of they all agree that these issues are important and they all believe the same things about them. And they it's kind of fascinating to watch as those on the left have adopted these views in succession and sometimes seemingly out of nowhere. So you look at 15 years ago, there certainly were a lot of people advocating for so-called gay rights, but it wasn't really even mainstream on the left 15 years ago. And even as recently as 8 years ago, we had the most radically leftist president in history who had to run on a platform of defending traditional marriage. Mm-hmm. And that was only 8 years ago. And we see how quickly that changed. And then the gender thing. Even 5 years ago, nobody was talking about this 5 years ago.
Yep.
They were complaining about gender roles just in terms of feminism and that sort of thing, but nobody was talking about how you could be whatever gender you want. The 52 genders, a lot of these were just invented in the blink of an eye, very recently. And the left just kind of goes along with it, whereas I think you find on the right there is not that cohesiveness to it. And if you get 100 conservatives in a room and you ask them what are the most important principles to us, what are our foundational principles, I think you'll get 60 or 70 different answers. So I think that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, to kind of rally conservatives and Christians around these issues, so that we can understand that our foundational principles are to protect life, marriage, and gender.
Yeah, and again, the foundations of our existence depend on these things. Matt, I noticed years ago in pro-life work that people protesting, you would have atheists, you would have gays and lesbians, and you'd have Satanists. And I remember thinking, why in the world these groups in such prominence, but there was almost a coalition against life, you could say. And this is almost a coalition against life and the foundations God has established. All right, we've got a break coming up, but Matt, what are you hoping that readers will get out of your book, Unholy Trinity?
Well, I'm hoping that they'll, first of all, come away with some clarity, understanding these issues, and as conservatives, understanding what the arguments are in our favor. So that, and then also, as I said, I want to galvanize and unify people, Christians and conservatives, around these issues, and to understand that we cannot move forward and argue about any other issue until we've established that life is sacred, marriage is sacred, and that men are men and women are women. And these are foundational things, ideas. We need to be able to establish and protect them.
All right, friends, we'll be right back with Matt Walsh, The Unholy Trinity, Blocking the Left's Assault on Life, Marriage, and Gender. I can't tell you how many times I was about to write on something. I thought, awesome. Matt already covered it in great depth. He's articulate, he's clear, he's fearless. You need to read what he writes. Thanks, friends, for joining us on The Line of Fire. My guest, Matt Walsh, one of the leading Christian bloggers online. You can read his blogs at theblaze.com. His book, new book, which is getting a lot of immediate attention, a lot of very positive attention, The Unholy Trinity, Blocking the Left's Assault on Life, Marriage, and Gender. Matt, a few specifics. Why is abortion the crowning achievement of liberalism?
Well, you look at the power that they assumed for themselves that they won through abortion. You know, if we're going back to the beginning of the discussion, that the left's ultimate goal is relativism, is the rejection of objective truth. And so with abortion, they've started right at the beginning by making human life itself relative. Human life, according to the pro-abortion person, human life, the humanity of an unborn child, is relative to how the mother feels about it, relative to how convenient that life is to those around it. And so they have given themselves power over life and death. Not just life and death, but, you know, they can take humanity away from somebody, from their child, from a human person, just because that life isn't convenient to them. And so in that sense, you know, they're never going to achieve anything greater than that. And when I say greater, I don't mean good. I mean of more magnitude than that.
All right. So that assault has been in place for decades now. The rhetoric surrounding it continues to get more and more shrill, especially as there's pushback on the conservative end. How do you think gay activists and their allies were so effective in getting marriage redefined, where now you have tens of millions of Americans saying, yeah, you have the right to marry the one you love? Yeah, as long as it's love, love wins, and it's all equality, why not? How were they so successful in marketing such a bizarre proposition that two men or two women can, quote, marry?
Well, I think there were many things that went into it. First of all, they were able to kind of set the terms for the argument, for the discussion, and we allowed them to do that. So they framed the discussion as one of, it's about rights, it's about who's allowed to love who, that sort of thing. And once we allowed them to frame the argument that way, and when I say we allowed it, I mean, we as in Christians were either ineffective in arguing against it, or we didn't even try, and we were just quiet. And so they framed the argument this way, and once they were able to frame it that way and get away with it, it was kind of game, set, match at that point. Once they were able to frame it as a discussion about rights, you know, rather than what is right, but human rights, then we were in trouble. But I think you take it back even further than that, because as I said, Christians were ineffective at defending marriage against this assault, or didn't even try in the first place. And part of that reason is because you have to trace, you know, the decay of the marriage covenant in American culture didn't start with gay marriage. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to trace it back decades and decades and decades. And Christians abandoned marriage as a covenant, as a monogamous, permanent covenant between man and woman. They abandoned that notion, you know, 40 years ago or more. And once we had done that, then it was, you know, sort of difficult to make the argument that marriage is sacred. Meanwhile, we're going out and getting, you know, 5 divorces and getting remarried left and right, treating marriage as this frivolous, superficial, impermanent thing. And so it was really easy for gay activists to just point at us and say, "Are you people serious? You're pretending that you think marriage is sacred? Look at you." And you know that even if we are hypocrites about it, and we are, that doesn't mean we're wrong about what we're saying in regards to gay marriage. But still, you know, anytime the other side can look at you and accurately accuse you of hypocrisy, that's going to be an effective bit of ammo that they have in their arsenal, and they used it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said for many years that no-fault heterosexual divorce in the church did more to undermine marriage than all gay activists combined. But we're saying both are wrong. Yeah, you pointed the finger at us, rightly so. Both are wrong. Redefining marriage is wrong, and losing the sacredness of marriage is wrong. Matt, you've got little kids that you're raising. You're calling for conservatives, for Christians to stand together and push back against this unholy trinity. Do you have hope that change can come? Do you have hope that your kids can be raised in a world that is more sane than the world that we live in today?
I don't have a lot of hope that my kids and their generation will be raised in a more sane world, because they're already living in a world that's even less sane than the one that I was raised in. And, you know, for it to all of a sudden become more sane, we'd have to have a very sudden change. A 180 would have to happen culturally pretty much overnight. And that's not going to happen. I do have hope ultimately. I have the ultimate hope, the spiritual hope, in that I know that the good guys win in the end, the end of all things. So I have that hope, and that's the only real hope that we need. But in a more kind of temporal sense, I think there is hope of sort of turning the culture back towards God, but that's going to be a gradual process. And my kids and their generation are going to be very much involved in fighting to make that turn. You know, it's not going to be made before. They're going to have to be involved in turning it back. And so I have to equip them for that. And we have to be in it for the long haul. This is a generational. We lost the culture over a course of generations. And I think it stands to reason that if we're going to win it back, it's going to happen over generations as well.
Right, so we live with expectation of the Lord's return and looking forward to that day, but we have a multi-generational mentality until that takes place. And just as you were raised when you started off by saying it's not what prompted you to get involved, but who, raised by godly parents, now you in turn are raising your kids in this way. So we, in that sense, can be holy counterculture revolutionaries by following the principles of Jesus. And Matt, I believe that gay activism effectively defeats itself because it overplays its hand. Those that were bullied become bullies, and then things keep going further and further with now name your gender and so on, whereas God's ways produce life and God's ways are best. So, Matt, appreciate all your work again. The new book, The Unholy Trinity, Blocking the Left's Assault on Life, Marriage, and Gender. We've just got about 45 seconds. What are you hearing from the readers of your book?
I'm hearing, I've been thrilled and humbled and very grateful for the positive response. People have actually read it. And as I said, humbled by that. I think a lot of people feel alone, and they look at these issues, particularly with respect to marriage and gender, and they feel like I'm not allowed to talk about this. My point of view is just extinct. Nobody feels this way anymore. And so they read a book like this and they realize that they're not alone and that these are important issues. And I think that they feel motivated by it. So I feel pretty good about that. And of course, there are a lot of liberals who hate the book, but most of them, it seems, haven't even read it. So I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, appreciate your work, Matt. Thanks for joining us on the air today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.